my brother said. He only feels important when he pays. My mother scoffed. That's why we let him. I said nothing, just slid the deed across the table and said, you have 30 days. They called me the golden son, but not with pride. More like sarcasm wrapped in gratitude they didn't mean. My name is Alex. I'm 28 years old and live in Chicago, but the story starts in Virginia, the place I was expected to leave, succeed, and keep sending money back like a human bank wire. It all began about 3 years ago when I landed a stable job at a fintech firm. Good pay, solid benefits, full remote. My parents were thrilled. Not for me, for themselves. You always were the responsible one, my mom had said, arms crossed, standing in our aging kitchen, her voice already calculating. Now maybe we can finally get caught up. That we was never about her and my dad. It was we, as in the entire household, which included my younger brother Mason, the one who lived rent-free in the same house I now paid the mortgage and property taxes for. Mason, of course, was the favorite. Always had been. He was 2 years younger than me and had the kind of easy smile and loud laugh that made him seem charming even when he was saying nothing at all. He'd flunked out of 2 colleges, worked maybe 6 weeks at a vape shop, and still somehow got his name carved into every Christmas ornament like he'd cured cancer. I didn't resent him at first. Not really. But over time, things built up. I'd get home from work to see charges on the shared grocery card for junk food and vape cartridges. My mom would call about the electric bill and then post vacation photos from Virginia Beach. I was paying for that beach trip, whether I agreed to or not. Mason? He'd text me from downstairs. Hey bro, can you grab some toilet paper next time you're out? We're out again, lol. Again. The part that really stung wasn't even the money. It was the way they acted like my success was theirs, but never actually credited to me. Like I owed it to them for raising me at all. I never got a thank you, just more requests. Then came Thanksgiving. I hadn't been home in a while, and I figured maybe things had softened. I took a few days off work, packed up my car, and drove the 10 hours back. Brought a couple of bottles of nice wine, a pecan pie from a bakery near my place. Tried to show up generous. Big mistake. Dinner was fine at first. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. But the mood shifted when I got up to grab another drink and accidentally overheard them talking. They didn't know I was standing near the hallway. I froze the moment I heard my name. He gets so touchy these days, my mom said. You'd think all that money would make him nicer. Mason laughed. Man's got a spreadsheet for feelings. Bet he writes off Christmas as a business loss. They all chuckled. Even my dad, the quiet one. You ask him for help and he acts like we're stealing from him, my mom went on. I mean, we made him who he is. Mason added, Golden Boy's just mad he can't by being interesting. Something in me cracked then. Not loudly. Just a quiet break, like a rubber band that had been stretched too long. I stepped back, went upstairs, and stayed there the rest of the night. They didn't notice I skipped dessert. That's when it finally hit me. I wasn't family. I was a resource. I wasn't loved. I was tolerated, funded, and mocked when I wasn't around. And when I was around, I was just inconvenient. That Thanksgiving was the last one I ever spent in that house. The last time I brought pie and hope and assumed being the provider meant being appreciated. I had been the golden son. Turns out, that just meant I was the ATM with a Wi-Fi connection. After Thanksgiving, I didn't go back home. I didn't return calls. I didn't reply to Mason's text asking if I could Venmo him, just $30 for gas. I told myself I was busy with work, but the truth was, I didn't have it in me to pretend anymore. That was around the time I remembered the will. My grandfather had passed away the year before. He was quiet, sharp, and didn't say much at family gatherings, just watch people. He'd always liked me, I think, in his own understated way. He'd taught me how to check an air filter, how to patch drywall, how to keep a straight face when someone was trying to make you feel small. At his funeral, everyone assumed the house would go to my mom, his only child. And I didn't ask questions. I was already paying the taxes and the upkeep at that point, so I figured it was hers, technically, but mine in practice. But then, about a month after the funeral, I got a letter in the mail. A manila envelope with my name handwritten across the front. Inside was a notarized copy of my grandfather's final will. I remember reading it twice, then a third time. He'd left the house to me. Not to my mom. Not to Mason. To me. Because you're the only one who treats responsibility like a gift instead of a burden. He wrote in neat cursive at the bottom. Do what you want with it, but don't let them ruin it. I didn't tell anyone. Not then. Not for a long time. I wasn't ready to be the bad guy. I didn't want to rip the floor out from under them, even if they were standing on it for free. So I kept paying the property tax quietly. I maintained the homeowner's insurance. I paid for a new roof when a storm knocked some shingles loose. I was still covering the water bill and internet, even though I hadn't lived there in years. But something had shifted. Little by little, I started pulling back. I canceled the shared grocery card. I stopped answering calls after 8 p.m. I stopped sending money just to help with Mason's car repair, or just until payday. I started saying no, at first gently, then more firmly. I didn't announce anything. I just stopped showing up for a role I hadn't auditioned for. Then came my birthday. I didn't expect a parade. I really didn't. But I did expect something. A call. A message. A single happy birthday from the people I'd kept afloat for the last 4 years. Nothing. Not from my mom. Not from Mason. Not even a sarcastic gif or a late-night text from my dad. I spent the evening alone, watching a movie I didn't finish and eating Chinese takeout in my apartment. My phone stayed silent, the screen dark except for a few Slack notifications and an Amazon delivery alert. That was the final straw. Not because I needed the attention, I'd gotten used to being invisible, but because I realized that without money, I didn't exist to them at all. I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out the will, held it in my hands for a long time. I had power, not out of revenge, not yet, but out of truth. I'd been treating my inheritance like a secret shame, like something to be hidden so they could keep pretending the house belonged to them. But it didn't. It belonged to me. And suddenly, I couldn't unsee that. The next morning, I called the county and had the tax bill switched from occupant to my name. It was the first legal breadcrumb, the first step in taking back what was mine. And from that point on, I didn't send them another dime. I waited another month after the birthday snub. Not because I was having second thoughts, but because I wanted to be calm. Not angry, not impulsive, just done. When I finally pulled into the driveway of the family home, it felt different. Smaller somehow, like the house itself knew what was coming. Mason's car was out front, parked sideways like always, taking up 2 spaces. The porch light was on even though it was still broad daylight. And through the front window, I could see him on the couch, feet up, controller in hand, yelling at some online game. I knocked once, then let myself in. I still had a key. Mason didn't even look up. "Yo, you brought food?" "No," I said. He turned. "Then what are you?" He stopped when he saw the envelope in my hand. Mom walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Alex, this is a surprise." "Yeah," I said. "It is." Dad was in the recliner. He gave me a nod like I was a mailman dropping off a package. No one asked how I'd been. No one asked why I came. "Got something for you all," I said, holding up the envelope. Mason squinted. "If this is about the utilities." "It's not." I set the envelope down on the coffee table. Mom reached for it, opened it, and pulled out the first page. Her eyes scanned the top line. Then again. "What is this?" she asked. "It's the deed," I said, quiet and even. "To this house." She blinked. "You mean the copy of the deed?" "No," I said. "The deed. As in the official transfer of ownership. To me." Mason laughed, full volume. "Bro, what are you talking about?" I didn't answer. Just reached into my bag and pulled out the original notarized will. Then I laid it gently beside the deed. "This can't be right," Mom said, her voice suddenly thinner. "Your grandfather left this house to me. Everyone knows that." I looked at her. He didn't. Mason leaned forward. "Okay, even if that's true, what? You're going to start charging rent now? Is that the plan?" I didn't say anything. Instead, I pulled out one last document, the eviction notice. 3 copies. One for each of them. "What the hell is this?" Dad said, finally sitting up straight. "It's a formal 60-day notice to vacate," I replied. "Filed this morning with the county clerk. Certified mail is on the way, but I figured I'd deliver it in person too." Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Mom looked up at me, hands trembling. "You're evicting us?" "I'm reclaiming what's mine." Mason stood up, arms wide like I owed him a reason. "You can't do this. You wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for us." "How do you figure?" I asked. "We raised you," he shot back. "We kept the lights on. We." I cut him off. "No, I did that. For years. While you played Xbox and called it ambition." Mom sat back, quiet now. No anger. Just disbelief. I looked at each of them. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is closure. You made it clear how little I mattered once the money stopped. Now I'm returning the favor." No one moved. No shouting. No dramatic exit. Just the sound of the clock ticking above the fireplace and a long, heavy stillness. I turned and walked out the door, got in my car, shut it gently, and drove away without looking back. No yelling. No slammed doors. Just a quiet coup. The kind that speaks loudest in silence. Back in Chicago, I let the silence settle. I didn't block anyone. I didn't answer, either. I let the texts pile up, let the voicemails go to storage. I read them once. Out of curiosity, not guilt, then archived every single one. "Mom. Alex, please. We need to talk. This isn't like you. What happened to family? Dad. You made your point. Now fix this. It's gone too far. Mason. You better hope you never need us again, because you burned this bridge." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I forwarded copies of the eviction notices to my lawyer, Mariah. She handled everything: paperwork, certified mail, courthouse filing. She was efficient and cool-headed, exactly what I needed. "You're protected legally," she said during one of our calls. "And if they try to fight it, we've got the deed, the will, and a paper trail longer than a CVS receipt." "Thanks," I said. She paused. "You okay?" I almost lied. But then I said, "Not yet. But I will be." I stayed off social media for a while, but one Sunday night I caved and checked my mom's Facebook. I knew I shouldn't, but part of me wanted to see what narrative they were spinning. There it was. A long, vague post about betrayal, losing a home to selfishness, and how money changes people. Dozens of sympathetic comments followed, all from distant cousins and church friends. None of them knew the full story, of course. They only saw what she wanted them to see. I didn't comment, didn't message anyone, just closed the app and got back to what I was doing, cleaning out a storage closet I hadn't touched in months. Somehow, organizing boxes felt more productive than explaining myself to people who'd never listened in the first place. Then, one night, out of nowhere, I got a call from Mr. Dalton, my grandfather's old neighbor. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. "I heard about what you did," he said, his voice low and weathered. That took guts. I braced myself. "If you're calling to tell me I went too far." "No," he interrupted. "I'm calling to say he'd be proud." That stopped me. He went on. "Your grandfather told me once he didn't trust anyone in that house, but you. Said you had a spine and a conscience. Rare combo. He left that place to you for a reason. You're doing right by him now." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. "Thank you," I said, voice catching in my throat. "Don't let him twist the story," he added. "You didn't betray your family. You just stopped letting them betray you." A few days later, I drove back to Virginia. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to see the house, not as the silent wallet they used to bleed dry, but as its actual owner. I parked a block away and walked up on foot. It was the last week of their 60-day notice. And sure enough, the move had begun. Boxes lined the porch. Mason's car was loaded, trunk open, tail lights blinking. My dad was bent over, taping a cardboard box shut. My mom stood at the window, arms crossed. They looked smaller, dimmer, like people mid-defeat, not mid-move. I didn't approach, just watched from behind a tree like a stranger passing through. There was no joy in it, but there was a strange calm. They were finally facing the weight of everything I'd carried for years. And now, for the first time, it was theirs alone. They called it betrayal, but I called it justice. And this quiet ending to the story they wrote, was just the beginning of mine. I didn't sleep that night after watching them pack up the house. Not because I was torn up with regret, that part had passed, but because everything felt eerily quiet. Too quiet. Like the silence after a storm, when all the damage is done but nobody's sure how to talk about it yet. The next morning, I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by half-opened boxes and clutter I'd been meaning to organize. Buried under some old paperwork was the envelope my grandfather had left with the will. I hadn't read the letter inside since the week of the funeral. The paper was thick, old-fashioned, folded neatly in thirds. His handwriting was stiff but steady. "Alex, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. Sorry to leave a mess, but I trust you more than I ever trusted them. This house has been in the family for decades. It deserves better than being treated like a free ride. You always saw the value in things, not just in money, but in work, in fairness. I know you'll do what's right. Whatever that ends up looking like, I'll be proud of you." I stared at his signature at the bottom. No flowery ending. No, with love. Just his name, Henry. But somehow, that said everything. That weekend, I drove back to the house. It was empty. No furniture, no voices, no signs of life. Just scuffed floors, dust-lined windowsills, and a faint scent of old wood and lemon cleaner. It looked exactly the way it had before my grandfather passed. Almost. I wandered through the room slowly, taking it all in. When I stepped into the upstairs hallway, I noticed something wedged behind the radiator. A photo frame. Face down. Forgotten, or maybe hidden. I picked it up. It was from Christmas about 15 years ago, back when I still had braces and Mason still had shaggy hair. We were both in flannel pajamas, sitting on the stairs, grinning like idiots. My grandfather stood behind us, arms crossed, smiling just slightly. He'd written a date on the back in pencil. That was before everything changed. Before the money. Before the lines between family and obligation got so blurred, none of us could tell the difference anymore. That night, I stayed in the house. I didn't bring a sleeping bag or blankets. Just curled up on the old carpet in the master bedroom and let myself sit in the discomfort. It wasn't about nostalgia, it was about letting go. In the morning, I woke up to pale sunlight cutting through the blinds. No noise. No voices. Just peace. I got in my car, drove straight to a nonprofit office I'd been researching for months, an organization that helped young adults aging out of foster care. I asked to meet with the director. By the end of the week, the house had a new future. I hired a renovation crew, not to flip it or rent it out, but to transform it. New plumbing, new floors, updated appliances. We turned the extra bedrooms into private spaces for residents. Added a shared kitchen, a study area, a quiet reading room. I didn't want to make money off it. I wanted to make meaning from it. When it was done, I filed the paperwork to convert the home into a nonprofit transitional residence, dedicated to helping youth who had no family to fall back on. I named it Henry House. People thought I was being charitable, but really, I was being selfish in the best way. I needed this place to become more than a symbol of everything I'd lost. I needed it to stand for something bigger, for the overlooked, the underestimated, the quiet ones who did the work without praise. Like me. Like the version of me my family never really saw. Legacy doesn't come from bloodlines. It comes from choices. And this time, I chose purpose over payback. Because even though they mocked me for years, my grandfather saw me. And now, so would the world. The first 2 residents moved in on a cloudy Monday morning. Jeremiah was 19, tall, soft-spoken, with a stack of worn library books in his backpack and an awkward, polite smile. Sasha was 20, all energy and nerves, lugging 2 duffel bags and a small potted plant she'd named Lola. They didn't know each other before that day, but by the end of the week, they were arguing over what music to play while making pasta together in the shared kitchen. Not in a tense way, in the kind of way that sounds like home. I kept my distance at first. I wasn't there to be in charge. That was the whole point. The house had an on-site coordinator, social services lined up, and community partners to help with job placement, therapy, and education. My role? Quiet support. Every Sunday, I dropped off groceries. Sometimes it was just basics, eggs, milk, bread. Other times, I'd bring extras, cookie dough, fresh berries, the good kind of coffee beans. They never asked for anything fancy, but I wanted them to know someone cared enough to think about the small things. Sometimes I stayed for a few minutes. Sometimes I lingered a little longer. One night, I walked in and found Sasha in the living room, curled up in a blanket with Jeremiah, watching some old superhero movie. They both looked up like they expected to be in trouble. "You're good," I said. "Just checking the thermostat." They nodded. Sasha smiled. Jeremiah gave me a shy thumbs up. I stood there a second longer, just watching. The TV glowed softly against the wall. A bowl of popcorn sat between them. The room was warm, not just from the radiator, but from something else. Something I hadn't felt in that house in a very long time. Peace. I remembered growing up here. The slammed doors. The silence over dinner. The constant feeling that nothing I did would ever be enough unless it came with a payment attached. But this felt different. The house wasn't haunted anymore. It didn't echo with guilt or hold onto old fights. It was full of light and clutter and mismatched throw pillows they'd picked out themselves. A new life had taken root in the space where my family's entitlement used to live. One afternoon, I brought over a secondhand porch swing I'd found on Craigslist. Painted it navy blue. Hung it just outside the front door like my grandfather used to have. A few days later, I drove by and saw Jeremiah sitting in it, sipping tea and reading a battered paperback. He looked calm, settled, and something in my chest, something old and bruised, softened. This wasn't the kind of family I grew up with. But maybe, just maybe, it was the kind I was meant to build. Not with guilt, not with debt, just with presence. With showing up, again and again, expecting nothing but hoping for warmth. And this time, for the first time, it felt like enough. It started with a phone call from Jerry, the guy who owned the local hardware store down the street from Henry House. "Hey Alex," he said, his voice slow and cautious. "You got someone named Mason in your family?" I froze. "Why?" "He was in here yesterday, asking about old lock types. Said he used to live in that house you turned into the youth home. Kept pressing for what kind of security system you had installed. Gave me a weird feeling." My stomach sank. I thanked Jerry, hung up, and drove straight to the house. When I got there, everything looked normal. Sasha was in the kitchen singing along to something on the radio while chopping peppers. Jeremiah was pacing the porch with his earbuds in, lost in a podcast. Neither of them had noticed anything strange. I didn't want to scare them, so I kept my explanation short. Just upgrading the locks and installing a new camera over the driveway. Nothing major. They nodded, didn't ask questions. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I knew Mason. Knew how he operated. He wouldn't storm in with fists flying. He'd try to weasel his way back through manipulation. And if that didn't work, through drama. He had always believed he was owed something, especially if someone else had worked for it. 3 days later, he showed up. It was just after 6 p.m. I was dropping off a bag of groceries when the pounding started on the front door. I opened it. Mason stood there in a wrinkled hoodie, breathing hard like he'd jogged up the block. He looked rough, the kind of rough that's half exhaustion, half ego collapse. His eyes darted past me, scanning the hallway. "What is this?" he barked. "You running a shelter now?" "Not a shelter," I said, keeping my voice even. "A transitional home. For people who need it." He scoffed. "You mean like me? I need a place to crash. You gonna help me or not?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "No." His eyebrows shot up. "You serious?" "Dead serious. You're just gonna turn your back on your own brother?" His voice pitched up, like he couldn't believe I wasn't folding. "You turned your back on me years ago, Mason. And then you laughed about it over stuffing and cranberry sauce. That house should have been mine," he snapped. "You tricked everyone with some secret will. You knew Mom and Dad always planned to give it to me." I blinked. "You mean the house you never paid a dime to maintain? The one you lived in like a hotel lobby while I worked overtime to keep the lights on?" "It's not about that," he said. "It's about what's right." "No," I said. "It's about what's yours. And this isn't." He stepped forward, getting close. "You don't get to shut me out. This is still my home." "No," I said again. "It never was. You just got used to taking up space in it." I could see it in his face. He wasn't there to reconcile. He was there to reclaim control. But the thing about Mason? He only had power when you let him wear you down. I didn't flinch. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. "Want to keep yelling? Or should we get the police involved now?" He stared at me. For a second, I thought he might swing. But then he stepped back. "Don't think this is over," he spat. "You can play the saint all you want, but we both know you're still that scared little kid who wanted Mom to love him more." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. He stormed off down the street, muttering under his breath. I watched until he disappeared around the corner, then walked back inside. Sasha and Jeremiah were both in the kitchen, wide-eyed but silent. "You okay?" Sasha asked. I nodded. "Who was that?" Jeremiah asked. "Just someone who used to live here," I said. "He doesn't anymore. And he never would again." The voicemail came late on a Thursday night. I'd just gotten back from Henry House, where Sasha had convinced Jeremiah to try her homemade mac and cheese with the secret ingredient. It was sour cream. He hated it. She loved that he hated it. I was tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes from a day spent doing something that actually matters. Then I saw it. One new message. From my mother. Her voice was shaky, soft, like she was trying to cry but couldn't quite get there. "Alex, it's Mom. I don't know what happened to you. You used to be such a sweet boy. You used to take care of us, remember? I don't even recognize you anymore. Your brother's lost, your father barely speaks, and you just walked away. I hope you're happy with whatever it is you're doing now. I thought family meant more to you than this." I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. And then I sat down at my desk, pulled out a pen, and started writing. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. Old school. The way my grandfather used to write me notes on yellow paper when I was a kid. "Dear Mom, you're right. Something did change. But it wasn't sudden. It was slow. Quiet. Years of being useful, but never heard. Needed, but never respected. I gave everything I had. Time, money, patience. And in return, I got laughed at behind closed doors. I got used. You raised me to believe that love looks like sacrifice. That family means showing up, no matter what. And I did. Every time. Until I realized none of you were ever really showing up for me. I'm not writing this to fight. I'm writing it to tell you the truth. I don't hate you. I'm not punishing you. But I am moving on. If you want to be in my life, really in it, then it has to be on different terms. No guilt. No manipulation. No more pretending that I'm the problem for finally setting boundaries. There's a door here, still slightly open. But I'm not holding it anymore. If you want to walk through it, you can. With respect. With honesty. If not, I'll be okay. I already am. Alex. I sealed it up, addressed the envelope, and mailed it the next morning. I didn't expect a reply. That wasn't the point. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about pain. It was about peace. Mine. I'd spent years trying to be the good son, the provider, the fixer. I bent until I broke, and they still called me selfish when I stopped. But this letter, was the opposite of selfish. It was truth. Boundaries. The final goodbye, with one quiet condition. Only if they came back different. And if they didn't, I'd already built something better. The porch swing creaked softly in the wind. I stood at the end of the walkway, coffee in hand, watching as sunlight spilled over the front of Henry House. The garden was in bloom again. Jeremiah had taken to planting things on the weekends. Sasha called it therapy you can eat. They'd been here for almost a year now. Not kids anymore, not quite adults either. Somewhere in between. But they were building something. Routines, habits, confidence. A version of home. Inside, I could hear music playing faintly. Someone was cooking, probably Sasha. She liked to hum while she stirred, loud and off-key. Jeremiah would be in the living room, feet on the coffee table, pretending to read while scrolling through job boards. There was nothing special happening that day, but it felt important anyway. The nonprofit had grown more than I ever imagined. We had donors now, a proper board of directors, a second property in the works. People reached out to us, community leaders, counselors, foster agencies, asking how to get involved, asking how to replicate the model. It was humbling and strange. I never set out to build a movement. I just wanted to reclaim a house that once felt like a weight around my neck and turn it into something good, something kind. And now, standing at the edge of the sidewalk, I realized I had. I sipped my coffee and looked toward the porch. That's when I saw her, a new resident, one of the younger ones, sitting on the swing, wrapped in a blanket, feet tucked under her. She was reading. Nothing dramatic, just flipping through pages quietly, like she'd been doing it her whole life. But it stopped me cold, because that exact moment, mirrored something buried deep in my memory. My grandfather on this same porch, years ago, quietly watching the world go by, never saying much, just present, steady, safe. That's who I'd become. Not the provider they used to drain. Not the golden son they only valued when the bills were due. Not the failure they once laughed at behind my back. I was something else now. A witness. A steward. A builder of second chances. I'd spent most of my life chasing validation from the wrong people, trying to buy my place in a family that only saw my worth in numbers. And in the end, I found something better. I found purpose. I found peace. And maybe, just maybe, I found family too. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose to create. I smiled, tipped my coffee toward the porch in a quiet toast, and turned to head back to my car. The wind picked up behind me, and the porch swing swayed gently, but no longer haunted. Now it just swung,